What's up everyone, how's it going? This is Waj, hope you guys are all doing well, and in this video I'm going to be doing a full review of the DJI Phantom 3 Professional. Now DJI has pretty much changed the face of aerial photography for the better. I think they've really introduced a kind of quintessential drone that somebody can get straight out of the box and fly the same day. They've made things very easy and straightforward to deal with in terms of flying, and even though there's still a lot of controversy with drones and privacy issues and things like that, I still think they're pretty cool products, and once you kind of learn the basics of them, there's a lot of value in them, especially if you're remotely interested in aerial videography and photography. Now, I've been using the Phantom 3 Professional for a couple of weeks now, and I'm going to share some of the capabilities that this thing can do and also share some of my negative points that I've encountered with the drone itself. So if you're interested in perhaps getting this drone in the future, or perhaps you're just interested in seeing what the new Phantom 3 Professional offers in terms of video capabilities and everything like that, is a perfect video for you. So without any further ado, let's get right into my full review. Now, first things first, when you look at the new Phantom 3, it looks pretty much identical to last generation Phantom 2 in terms of its core design philosophy. It's the same quadricopter configuration that you've experienced before from other DJI drones. The feet themselves don't retract like they do on the Inspire 1, so you can only really shoot video facing at the front of the drone itself, which can be limiting for some people that want to experiment with getting different shots and having full control of the gimbal itself, because I think the gimbal is certainly capable of giving you full range of motions, that it'll give you all the different camera angles you'll ever need. But unfortunately, I think this design is still holding the Phantom 3 back in terms of its potential capabilities. It would have been awesome to see kind of a miniaturized version of the Inspire 1 at this price point, but that's sadly not the case. Now, the props themselves are very similar to the DJI Phantom 2 props. There's really no difference there, but there is a difference in terms of the motors. We have much more powerful motors on the Phantom 3, giving it a faster top speed, as well as being a little bit more agile and a little bit more stable in terms of its flight patterns. The other thing I found is that the actual movements of the drones is much more subtle and much more refined, giving you a little bit more of a cinematic feel that will definitely help you out in getting more professional looking aerial photography. Now, if you take a look at the bottom portion of the Phantom 3, you can see that we have a couple of different sensors that you haven't encountered before. One of these sensors is an optical flow sensor, which is basically a little camera that recognizes unique patterns on the ground, so it can basically stabilize your XY position. Additionally, you also have a set of ultrasonic sensors that measures the distance from the drone to the ground itself using sound waves. Now, coupled with this new technology, what the Phantom 3 can do now is be a lot more stable in indoor conditions where you might not have a GPS signal. Now, that's great if you're going to use the Phantom 3 for certain indoor shots, but for me personally, I'm more of an outdoor person, and this is where the drone shines. In terms of GPS, the internal processing has been upgraded thanks to the new processor. It does find its GPS satellites are really quite quick, and in addition to that, it's also been updated to work with GLONASS, a Russian satellite-based navigation system that works in parallel with the standard GPS. Combining these two systems allows the Phantom 3 to more quickly and reliably find a satellite signal and to more precisely understand its exact location. Now, let's talk battery life. It's probably one of the most important and critical things about any quadricopter, because every second counts when you're up in the air. And the new Phantom 3 actually has a new redesigned battery. It looks identical to the previous Phantom series of batteries, but we do have an increase of voltage, giving you a little bit more flight time. I encountered anywhere between 20 to 24 minutes in terms of my flight times. Again, your flight time will vary depending upon how you're flying the drone and a whole bunch of different external variables. Now, I'm not going to say that the Phantom 3 is class leading in terms of battery performance, because in the world of custom quadricopters, the sky's the limit in terms of how much battery life you can have. But generally speaking, as a standalone consumer product that is an out-of-the-box, ready-to-go experience, this is fairly good, and certainly quite a bit better than the last generation Phantom 2 and the Phantom 2 Vision Plus. Now, if you do decide to get the Phantom 3 Professional over the Advance, one other benefit you get besides the camera quality is the fact that the battery can charge quite a bit faster, because you have a 100-watt charger, opposed to the Advanced Edition, which comes with a 57-watt charger. Now, what that means means with the 100-watt charger, you can pretty much get from a completely dead battery to a 100% charged battery in just under 35 minutes, and even something around 25 minutes, depending upon what your battery level is. And that's really great. That means if you're stuck with one battery, or if you have multiple batteries, it's going to charge faster, which is always a great thing. Now let's talk about the radio controller that comes with the Phantom 3 Professional. It's very similar to the Inspire 1. It's not made out of the metal construction that the Inspire 1 is made out of primarily. It has a lot of polycarbonate plastics, but a lot of rubber side grips, as well as the bottom is mostly made out of rubber, so it gives you a plenty of ergonomics in terms of grips, and it feels really great in the hand. It has a nice heft towards it, and it's certainly a lot less plasticky than the previous generation Phantom 2 Vision Plus controller. The controller in terms of flying feels really smooth. It's very easy to fly. It's really no different from the previous generation of Phantom controllers in terms of the flight dynamics themselves. In terms of the buttons and dials, you have plenty to work with, pretty much everything you would need to get started. So you have a button for taking videos, for shooting stills. You have a little dial to change your exposure on the fly, as well as a dial on the left-hand side that'll control your pitch movements on the gimbal itself. You even have some customization controllers on the back of the radio as well, so you can set those to whatever you like, which is quite fantastic. And of course, you can change your flight dynamics and stick configuration in the piloting app itself. Now, hands down, one of my favorite features on the new controller definitely has to be the integration of the new light bridge technology that we saw in the Inspire 1. So that means you have a hardwired connection from the controller to your device, and that'll give you 720p in terms of video monitoring capabilities at around 30 FPS, and you can use it for around 2 kilometers, which is really quite versatile and very, very powerful feature. So let's go ahead and explore the DJI piloting app that we have available on both iOS and Android platforms. We're running it on Android right now, and the first thing you see on the bottom section is just a readout of how fast you're traveling in terms of vertical and horizontal. It also gives you the signal strength between your controller and the Phantom 3. Right beside that, you have a little mini map, which is always handy. We don't have a GPS signal right now because we're indoors, and here's where you can calibrate your compass and find more information about battery life and what kind of flight mode you're in as well. You can adjust all those things in the different settings menus up top. Now, in terms of stills and videos, you basically have a toggle switch for switching between stills and videos. The nice thing is when you're shooting video, you can shoot a still at the same time, which is nice. To change some of those parameters, you can actually hit that little function button. And here on the left side, you can change some of the parameters of your videos and stills capabilities. For the image format, you can actually change whether it shoots JPEG or RAW or a combination of both, which is nice if you want to edit your photos. In terms of the video quality settings, for white balance, you have an option between auto and a couple of different presets. You can also customize your own white balance according to the Kelvin level. Furthermore, you can also set the picture style settings in terms of saturation, contrast, and everything like that. The nice thing is if you are going to be doing some color grading, you do have a log setting, so you can really get down to business on the post-production side if you're going to be shooting a lot of aerial work for professional use applications. So it gives you a decent amount of control there. Keep in mind that the codec is still H.264, so you're still limited in terms of the latitude there. In terms of the video settings, you have 4 options in terms of resolution, 2 4K options, as well as a 1920 by 1080 and 720p options, and by tapping on them, you can change the frame rate of each of those parameters, which is nice. Now, let's not waste any more time. Let's talk about the main feature about the Phantom 3 Professional, and that's the brand new camera. Now, in terms of the camera itself, DJI has completely redesigned the camera that goes on this drone. Now you have a much more standard lens. It's actually a 20mm lens. It's f2.8 in terms of its maximum aperture, so it's going to be a little bit better in terms of low light. But obviously, the biggest thing that's apparent from the previous generation Vision cameras is the field of view is now 94 degrees, so it's not as wide as a previous generation Phantom drones, and what that means is you have less overall barrel distortion, so you don't have the fisheye effect that you had on the Phantom 2 Vision Plus. This gives it a much more cinematic feel, and lines are a lot more parallel and less distorted. You have less vignetting issues, and even though it might not be as wide as previous generation cameras, that gives you a little bit more of the scenery, I think as a cinematic piece of equipment, it is definitely a huge improvement when it comes to the lens factor. Now, as we mentioned before, during the app tour, there's quite a bit of options when it comes to the cameras in terms of the color profile settings you can choose, as well as the different resolutions and frame rates you can choose at. In terms of its maximum setting, you're looking at 4K at 30 FPS. You can also obviously shoot at lower frames per second if you want the whole cinematic look of 24 frames per second, which really does look pretty sleek and definitely has a nice filmic look when you're shooting in 25 or 24 frames per second. Now, obviously, you do have the option to shoot full HD and 720p at around 60 FPS. Unfortunately, one of the biggest kind of things that I wish it has was an option for 120 frames per second at perhaps 720p. That would have been a really cool feature. I actually have 240 frames per second at 720p on the GoPro Hero 4 Black Edition with the Phantom 2. And really, if you want to do any kind of slow motion stuff, you're limited to 60 FPS, which doesn't give you a lot of room to play with for overcranking and getting cool, unique slow motion stuff when you're up in the air. Now, another big issue I have with the Phantom 3, especially if you're going to use it for any kind of commercial use or something that's going to be theatrical potentially, is the bit rate. It's only recording at 60 megabits per second, even at the full 4K resolution, which is quite low. And usually 1080p records at that resolution, and 4K should be recorded at almost triple that bit rate, which is not the case. And with the result of that codec, you're going to experience some imaging artifact issues, especially when it comes to looking at fine details such as blades of grass and things like that. And when it comes to sharp angular lines, you're going to experience some aliasing and moire, as you can see over here, which for the most part doesn't look bad, but again, something you definitely have to be careful of. And that's probably an important distinction we should make, that this thing is really not going to compete with those heavy duty drones that have the capacity to hold a dedicated cinema camera that can record at a really high bit rate and that has a much better dynamic range than this drone itself. It's really good for its compact size and its easy use, and you can definitely fool some people into thinking that you got some kind of aerial red helicopter rig to come up with some of these shots, because it is so smooth, and with the right lighting you can definitely pull off some really amazing looking stuff, and it's pretty compelling in terms of those factors, but it's not going to replace a professional aerial photography rig by any stretch of the imagination. Now, one thing I do have to mention is that the actual dynamic range of the camera is fairly good. I experienced really no problems in terms of getting all the details in most of my highlights and most of my shadows. Now, in terms of extreme examples, the camera is going to struggle quite a bit because it doesn't have a tremendous amount of latitude in terms of its internal recording codec capabilities, but generally speaking, definitely not bad for an 8-bit camera. Now, even though this is primarily geared for video shooters, the stills capability isn't bad. You're looking at 12 megapixel stills, and it has full raw capabilities. You can easily shoot really high quality stills and edit them later to get the ideal image. And obviously you can shoot a little stills while you're shooting a video as well, which is really quite handy if you want to preserve a really cool shot. Now, if you guys are interested in viewing the full 4K footage coming out of the Phantom 3 Professional, I actually have a dedicated video for that. You can click right now to go to that video trailer, and I'll show you all the little clips that I shot with the Phantom 3. Generally speaking, the quality is quite sensational, and definitely view it in 4K even if you have a 1080p monitor, because you'll get the best bit rate out of it. Now, just to sum up our review, let's go down to the pros and cons that we encountered with the Phantom 3 Professional. We'll start with the things that I didn't like about the drone. Firstly, even though the Phantom 3 is fairly easy to fly for beginners, but if you ever come across a building or fly into a tree or hit a bird along the way, kiss your $1,200 goodbye, because there's really no recovering from that. Now, there are drones that are going to come out that will have obstacle avoidance technology, so they'll actively monitor the environment and avoid anything that the drone may come in harmful contact with. Over the past couple of months, I've definitely had a couple of different close calls, and having an obstacle avoidance system or some kind of intelligent system that monitors hazards in the environment would be really fantastic. There will be other drones that will have that. Unfortunately, we don't have any of that system planned for the Phantom 3 in the near future. Next, this is more of a minor issue for professionals, but with the Inspire 1, it actually has a HDMI output on the radio controller itself. We don't have that output connection on the controller that comes with the Phantom 3 Professional. So if you want to output video for live streaming purposes or broadcast purposes, you can't really do that. You can't get access to the camera remotely, which would have been a really killer feature. Now, I do understand with a future firmware update, you can use the Inspire 1 controller with the Phantom 3, but at this point, you don't have access to the video feed on the drone's camera remotely. Next, even though the video quality is generally pretty good, there are some issues that you're going to have with fine details. You're going to find moire in fine repeating patterns, as well as some compression artifacts in fine details in the environment, such as blades of grass and things like that. Of course, I understand why you're getting those compression artifacts. It's mainly due to the H.264 codec, which is fairly compressed and records the video footage, especially in 4K, at a fairly low bitrate, but it's understandable because this is more of a prosumer product than really anything else. Now, the last thing I want to mention in terms of cons is the fact that you can still only record from the side of the drone itself, and that makes sense because it's the same exact design from the first generation Phantom drone, so there's really no difference there. You can only shoot from the front facing side of the camera. You can't really pivot the camera around, even though the gimbal probably has some of those capabilities. The legs don't go up like they do on the Inspire 1, and of course you don't have a dual operator. So unlike the Inspire 1, you can't really fly and have somebody else take control of your camera movements. And of course, it's not that kind of drone. It's more of a hobbyist drone for people that want to do casual aerial photography. If you really want to step up your game in terms of aerial photography, you probably want to go to the Inspire 1. But again, the price point on this and the fact that the video quality is very similar to the Inspire 1, it would have been fantastic if DJI redesigned the Phantom 3 to kind of get a better perspective on the camera itself and to kind of take advantage of more aerial photography cinematic options. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Most likely, they're probably saving that for the future iterations of this drone. Now, let's move on to some of the stuff that I did like about the Phantom 3 Professional. Firstly, even though it has imaging artifacts, generally speaking, the camera is quite fantastic. If you're in decently bright conditions, which you're going to be flying anyways because you can't really fly this thing in bad weather, you're going to get fantastic results, generally speaking. Colors look very saturated and very fairly accurate as well. There's no distortion in the perspective itself because the lens is a little bit more of a standard lens than the fisheye lens that we experienced in previous generation Phantom drones. So that's definitely excellent. And plus you have a decent amount of controls in the internal settings of the drone itself. So you can shoot a more flat picture profile if you want to do a little bit of color grading. So that's pretty versatile for some of you guys out there that want to get the most out of your aerial photography. Secondly, I do have to say that the drone is extremely easy to fly. Of course, try to avoid trees and birds and things like that. But once you do, it's rock solid in terms of its hovering capabilities. There's very little deviation because we have all those new sensors on it, and the GPS internal processing is much faster as well. So it's very easy to fly up. The boot up time is very fast as well. So in terms of a flying standpoint, this thing is extremely easy and has a very small learning curve. The other thing I want to mention is the battery life is slightly improved from the previous generation Phantom drones, as well as now we have the fast charging capabilities. So in terms of the battery performance, there is an upgrade there. Moving forward, one of my favorite features on the Phantom 3 is that the new controller is using the Lightbridge technology, so that gives you 720p video feeds at 30 FPS with very minimal latency, I think around 200 milliseconds, which is very usable. I had no problems in sending the drone about 1,500 meters away from me, and the video feed was rock solid, especially when you have line of sight. So it's really an essential feature to have, and it's a really well thought out and integrated system that pretty much everybody can use. Now, in terms of range, we do have a significant improvement in terms of range from the Phantom 2 of up to 2,000 meters, 2 kilometers. Of course, you want line of sight and to be in a fairly unobstructed view of the drone itself, which you want to do anyways, but that's very impressive. At 2 kilometers, this thing is a very capable drone that can do a lot of different impressive things. Now, last but not least, one of my favorite features on the Phantom 3 Professional is the fact that straight out of the box, this thing is ready to use, and the fact that it has all those different pros that I mentioned before in terms of video quality, in terms of the light bridge technology, 2-kilometer range. This is a very powerful solution that comes in a fairly affordable price tag, around under $1,300. There's not a lot of solutions out there that have this kind of built-in capabilities, and that gives you excellent video capturing capabilities that will meet pretty much everybody's cinematic needs in terms of aerial photography. So for me personally, I've been using the Phantom 2 with the GoPro Hero 4, and I don't have an FPV kit. You can't really monitor what you're doing. So to come from that to this, with giving almost the same results as what you would get from a GoPro Hero 4 camera, is really quite fantastic, and the convenience factor is certainly worth the price tag of the drone itself. But really, on that, guys, that's really it. Hopefully this video helped you out in some way. If it did, definitely give us a thumbs up, and check out the description down below where you find more information about the Phantom 3. If you want to make videos like this possible and help support our channel, definitely check out our Amazon affiliate links. So if you go through any of our Amazon links, it gives us a little bit of kickback if you get anything through Amazon. It doesn't cost you guys anything extra, but it helps make videos like this possible. We thank everybody for going through our Amazon links, because in every small bit way, it makes videos like this possible, because it definitely takes a lot of time and money to get all these products and to get all these videos out to you guys. But we definitely love to thank you guys for all your support over the years, and thank you so much for watching. We'll see you later. Take care.